In the heart of a bustling city, there lived a young woman named Sarah. She was in her early 20s, a free spirit who had recently moved to town in search of new adventures and opportunities. Eager to make her dreams come true, she embarked on a journey to find a cozy apartment that she could call home. But like many young adults, she soon realized that the cost of living in the city was not something to be taken lightly. Determined to make ends meet and not let her dreams be shattered, Sarah decided to seek a roommate to share the financial burden. After all, what could be more practical than sharing rent and expenses? With this in mind, Sarah turned to the age-old savior of those in need of roommates, Craigslist. She posted a carefully crafted ad seeking a roommate who would not just split the bills, but also share her vision of creating a harmonious living space. Sarah believed in compatibility and the importance of finding someone who could bring positivity to her life. Little did she know that her quest for a roommate would soon turn into a riveting tale filled with unexpected twists and turns. Responses to her ad started flooding in, each email promising a potential roommate who seemed like the perfect fit. Among these responses, one individual stood out like a shining star in the night sky. Let's call him Alex. In his initial message, he came across as friendly, responsible, and even witty. Their digital conversation began, and they delved into discussions about their interests, schedules, and living expectations. Alex, through his well-crafted messages, managed to persuade Sarah that he was the ideal match. He claimed to be a professional with impeccable references and a spotless rental history. He assured Sarah that he would always pay his share of the rent on time and take great care of their shared space. The promise of shared expenses and the prospect of a reliable, friendly roommate led Sarah to agree to meet Alex in person. Their first face-to-face encounter took place at a charming local coffee shop. Sarah arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, unsure of what to expect. She was pleasantly surprised to see that Alex looked just as he did in his photos, his warm smile putting her at ease. Over cups of coffee, they talked about their lives, dreams, and ambitions. Sarah learned that Alex had recently moved to the city for a promising new job, and he appeared genuinely excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. Their conversation flowed smoothly, and Sarah felt herself warming up to her potential new roommate. As the days turned into weeks, however, their budding friendship began to take a dark and disturbing turn. Sarah started noticing unsettling signs that hinted at Alex's true nature. He would frequently come home late at night, often in a state of intoxication. His behavior grew increasingly erratic, and he began to exhibit explosive anger over trivial matters. One evening, as Sarah was relaxing in the living room, she heard the sound of the front door slamming shut. Alex had returned home in a drunken rage, his face contorted with anger. He accused her of stealing his belongings, despite the fact that Sarah had never touched his things. His irrationality knew no bounds, and he became physically aggressive, cornering Sarah in the living room. Terrified and trapped, Sarah had no choice but to call the police. Her heart raced as she hid in her room, listening to the escalating argument outside her door. The situation had spiraled into a nightmare she could never have anticipated when she first met Alex. The wailing sirens of police cars echoed through the apartment complex, and the situation quickly escalated into chaos. The police arrived and, after a heated confrontation, arrested Alex for assault and property damage. It was a harrowing experience that left Sarah shaken to her core. As the dust settled, Sarah began to uncover the unsettling truth about her former roommate. She learned that Alex had a history of violent behavior and a criminal record that he had concealed from her. The references he had provided during their initial communication were nothing more than elaborate fabrications. In the aftermath of this terrifying ordeal, Sarah decided to share her story online, hoping to warn others about the dangers of trusting strangers on Craigslist. Her experience served as a stark reminder that the internet, while a powerful tool for connection, can also conceal dark secrets. The importance of conducting thorough background checks and exercising caution when dealing with strangers could not be overstated. Even after Alex's arrest, Sarah's life was far from returning to normal. The nightmares that had begun with his arrival continued to haunt her. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of someone lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Her once beloved apartment now felt like a prison, and the familiar streets outside seemed to have taken on an eerie, foreboding quality. One night, as Sarah lay awake in bed, she heard a series of strange, unsettling sounds coming from the living room. Her heart raced as she cautiously ventured out to investigate. In the dimly lit room, she found her belongings scattered about, her cherished possessions defiled and vandalized. It was as if the very essence of her home had been violated. Trembling with fear, Sarah contacted the police once more. They arrived promptly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they assessed the damage. The officers assured her that they would increase patrols in the area and investigate the incident thoroughly. But even with their reassurances, Sarah couldn't escape the feeling that her life was in grave danger. As the weeks passed, Sarah's paranoia deepened. She began to notice peculiar patterns and signs that suggested Alex might have left behind an ominous trail of vengeance. Cryptic messages and strange symbols began appearing around the apartment, etched into the walls and hidden in corners. It was as if someone was trying to communicate with her through these sinister markings. Terrified and desperate for answers, Sarah embarked on a journey of unraveling the mystery that had engulfed her life. She pored over old emails and messages, searching for any clues that might reveal the true identity and motives of the man who had once been her roommate. She enlisted the help of a private investigator, hoping that a professional could bring some clarity to the darkness that had descended upon her. The investigator uncovered a web of deception and manipulation that ran deep. Alex's real name was not Alex at all, but a carefully constructed alias designed to obscure his true identity. He had a history of stalking and terrorizing his former roommates, leaving a trail of victims in his wake. The revelation sent shivers down Sarah's spine, realizing the grave danger she had unknowingly brought into her life. Determined to confront the monster that had tormented her, Sarah, armed with newfound information, reached out to the police. They began a manhunt to track down the elusive and dangerous Alex, who had gone into hiding. The days turned into weeks, and the tension in Sarah's life continued to mount. Then, one fateful evening, as Sarah was returning home from work, she spotted a figure lurking in the shadows near her apartment. Her heart raced as she realized that it was him, Alex. He had returned to finish what he had started, to reclaim the twisted control he had lost. A chilling confrontation unfolded on the dimly lit street outside her building. Sarah screamed for help, her voice echoing through the night. Passers-by rushed to her aid, and the police arrived just in time to apprehend Alex once more. It was a harrowing battle between light and darkness, and this time, the light emerged victorious. The story of Sarah and her roommate from hell is a cautionary tale that unfolds the darker side of online interactions. In an age where digital connections have become the norm, it serves as a stark reminder that not everyone on the internet is who they claim to be. Trusting blindly can have harrowing consequences, as Sarah learned the hard way. As we navigate the vast digital landscape of the modern world, it is crucial to exercise caution, conduct thorough background checks, and prioritize safety when interacting with strangers. Sarah's horrifying experience is a testament to the fact that the consequences of trust can be severe, and the internet can sometimes be a realm where danger lurks in unexpected corners. Sarah's journey, marked by terror, determination, and ultimately survival, serves as a chilling reminder that evil can take many forms, even one as seemingly innocuous as a potential roommate. It is a tale that will forever linger in the shadows of her past, a reminder that the line between safety and peril can be razor thin, and the darkness can sometimes lurk closer than we dare to imagine. In the heart of the digital age, Craigslist had become both a beacon of hope and a shadowy abyss. Founded in 1995, it had grown into a sprawling virtual marketplace where one could traverse the vast expanse of human desires. Its minimalist interface and free listings made it a digital Eden, accessible to all. Here, one could find jobs, housing, treasures, and even connections with others. Yet, beneath the veneer of convenience and opportunity, it concealed a sinister underbelly. Our narrative unfolds with Sarah, an eager recent college graduate seeking a fresh start in the city. Her first challenge was finding an apartment, and Craigslist seemed like a lifeline. A listing for a charming one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood seemed like a lifeline. The rent was astoundingly reasonable, and the photos portrayed an inviting abode that whispered of new beginnings. Sarah reached out to the person behind the listing, a landlord who introduced himself as John. The email exchange was swift and cordial, and they agreed to meet in person to discuss the details. John, punctual and polite, arranged a meeting for the following evening. The night of the rendezvous arrived, and Sarah embarked on her journey to the address provided by John. The neighborhood exuded an aura of tranquility and respectability. Yet, as she approached the apartment building, an indefinable sense of dread seemed to creep over her. An icy hand gripped her heart, but she dismissed it as mere jitters. Crossing the threshold into the apartment, Sarah's initial enthusiasm dwindled into disbelief. The place was devoid of furniture and personal touches, an empty canvas that mocked the concept of home. John offered an explanation, claiming he had recently moved and had yet to furnish the apartment. But an ominous atmosphere clung to the space, and Sarah's intuition screamed for caution. As the conversation progressed, John's behavior took a disconcerting turn. His inquiries veered into the realm of the intensely personal, delving into Sarah's life with unsettling curiosity. Anxiety coiled within her as a dreadful epiphany took shape. This was no ordinary landlord, and this was no ordinary meeting. With trembling hands and a heart pounding like a desperate plea, Sarah knew she had to escape. She rose from her chair, her voice quivering as she forced a smile, and inched towards the exit. Yet, as she neared the door, John moved with an eerie swiftness, blocking her path. The mask of civility he wore shattered, revealing the abyss within. Sarah's survival instincts roared to life as terror surged through her veins. Desperation fueled her as she summoned every ounce of strength and pushed past John. Panic swirled around her like a tempest as she raced down the stairwell, the ominous echoes of pursuit reverberating in her ears. The shadows seemed to reach out for her, but she pressed forward, understanding that her very life depended on it. Reaching the ground floor, she exploded out of the building and into the chilly night air. She dared not glance back, fearing that John might be hot on her heels. With trembling hands, she flanked down a passing taxi, the driver blissfully ignorant of the horror she had just narrowly escaped. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she left that nightmarish place behind. Days melded into nights, and Sarah couldn't shake the trauma of that harrowing encounter. She confided in a close friend, and together, they embarked on a mission to uncover the depths of John's malevolence. Their investigations unveiled a horrifying truth that surpassed their worst nightmares. John had a sinister history of luring unsuspecting victims through Craigslist, and some had never resurfaced. The authorities were alerted, and a relentless manhunt was launched. As investigators delved deeper, they unearthed a nightmarish trail of deceit and brutality. John had a concealed chamber in the basement of the building, a grim dungeon where he had imprisoned and tormented his hateless victims. The walls bore witness to unspeakable horrors, splattered with the remnants of broken souls. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, shattering the illusion of safety that had once surrounded Craigslist. John's gruesome secret chamber became a symbol of the darkness that could lurk behind any digital interaction. The digital Eden had transformed into a haunted realm, and the very air seemed tainted with fear. It was discovered that John had meticulously documented his victims' suffering, turning their torment into a macabre art form. Photographs, diaries, and chilling audio recordings were discovered, revealing the depths of his sadistic nature. Each room in his apartment held a grim tableau of suffering, a testament to the horrors he had inflicted. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that John had been eluding the authorities for years, leaving a trail of terror in his wake. He had cunningly evaded capture, using false identities and a network of contacts to cover his tracks. The police faced a formidable adversary in their pursuit of this elusive predator. The community rallied, driven by fear and outrage. Vigilance groups formed, determined to hunt down John and deliver their own form of justice. It was a volatile and dangerous situation, with tensions reaching a boiling point. The city became a battleground between those seeking retribution and the law enforcement agencies desperately trying to bring John to justice. The hunt for John reached a fever pitch as law enforcement closed in on his location. He had barricaded himself within a dark, decrepit warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a lair of horrors where he had planned his grisly acts. The standoff that ensued was a chilling spectacle, with the city holding its collective breath. As the SWAT team stormed the warehouse, a gruesome scene awaited them. The walls were adorned with gruesome trophies, the stench of decay hung heavy in the air, and the muffled cries of John's captors echoed through the darkness. In the final confrontation, John met a violent end, his reign of terror coming to a gruesome conclusion. In the aftermath of John's capture and demise, the city was left with scars that ran deep. The community grappled with the trauma of knowing that such horrors could exist in their midst. Craigslist, once seen as a tool of convenience, had become synonymous with danger and malevolence. Sarah's story, though a testament to survival, served as a chilling reminder of the darkness that could lurk behind the anonymity of the digital realm. It underscored the need for unwavering caution when navigating the treacherous waters of online platforms. The Internet, once a symbol of progress and connectivity, had revealed its shadowy side, and the city would never be the same again. Sarah's harrowing ordeal was a journey through the abyss of the digital age, a stark reminder that vigilance and self-preservation were essential in the face of hidden dangers. The Internet had expanded our horizons, but it had also unveiled the sinister corners that demanded our utmost caution. As the city and its inhabitants grappled with the lingering nightmares, they vowed never to forget the gruesome truth that had been exposed. Craigslist had become a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of the horrors that could be lurking behind the screen. Our story begins in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Willowdale, where the sun-kissed streets and neatly trimmed lawns seem to epitomize the essence of tranquility. It was in this idyllic setting that Sarah, a young woman on the cusp of a new chapter in her life, found herself in dire need of furniture for her freshly rented apartment. As she stared at the barren rooms, Sarah's budget-conscious mind led her to the virtual aisles of Craigslist. This online classified platform had become a household name for those seeking deals, jobs, housing, and everything in between. And so, with a few keystrokes, Sarah embarked on her quest for budget-friendly furniture. What she didn't anticipate was that this seemingly mundane online search would soon lead her down a dark and treacherous path. One evening, as Sarah scrolled through the listings, her eyes locked onto an enticing offer: a used sofa and coffee table in pristine condition at a price that seemed too good to be true. The photos showcased the items in their full glory, and her excitement surged. She wasted no time in reaching out to the seller, who went by the pseudonym Max. Max was quick to respond, his messages polite and reassuring. He described himself as a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, immediately putting Sarah at ease. They arranged to meet at a public parking lot during daylight hours, a precaution Sarah believed would ensure her safety. The appointed day arrived, and Sarah's heart pounded with anticipation. She had checked and double-checked the address and time, determined to make her new apartment feel like home. But as she pulled into the parking lot, her excitement waned, replaced by an unsettling feeling that crept over her like a shadow. A battered and nondescript farm was parked nearby, its windows tinted so dark that it was impossible to see inside. Sarah's unease grew, but she brushed it off as nerves and decided to wait a little longer. Minutes ticked by, slowly stretching into what felt like hours. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that only deepened her anxiety. Just when she was about to give up hope, the side door of the van slid open, and a man emerged. But this man was not the middle-aged, friendly Max she had imagined. He was younger, with a menacing appearance that sent shivers down her spine. His twisted grin hinted at a darkness hidden behind the facade. In that heart-stopping moment, Sarah knew she had made a grave mistake. Panic surged through her veins as she attempted to drive away, but the man was faster. He reached her car door, yanked it open with brute force, and pulled her out. Sarah's screams for help pierced the air, but they went unanswered as the man dragged her towards the ominous van. The interior of the van was a nightmare come to life. Inside, she saw restraints and tools that sent shivers down her spine. The stench of decay hung in the air, mingling with the metallic tan of fear. She realized that this was not a mere chance encounter with a dangerous stranger, but a meticulously planned trap. Terrified, and with adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah fought back with every ounce of strength she possessed. She managed to break free momentarily and sprinted towards the nearest store, her voice crying out for help. Brave bystanders rushed to her aid, and the police were summoned to the scene. The assailant, realizing his sinister plan had unraveled, fled the scene, leaving the stolen van behind. As the police arrived and investigated the van, they made a horrifying discovery. Hidden beneath the false floor in the back of the vehicle were disturbing trophies of the assailant's past crimes. A collection of blood-stained clothing, photographs of terrified victims, and a journal filled with chilling accounts of his sinister deeds. It became clear that Sarah had narrowly escaped a fate far worse than she could have ever imagined. Sarah's horrifying experience serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the shadows of platforms like Craigslist. While countless transactions on the site occur without incident, it only takes one malicious individual to turn a seemingly harmless exchange into a life-threatening situation. In a world where the internet has transformed the way we connect, buy, sell, and trade, it's essential to prioritize safety above all else. Always meet in well-lit, public places, inform someone you trust about your meeting, trust your instincts, and never hesitate to walk away if something doesn't feel right. Sarah's story is a cautionary tale, urging us all to exercise vigilance when navigating the digital marketplace. It reminds us that real-life horrors can unfold in the most unexpected of places, even amidst the convenience and accessibility of platforms like Craigslist. The internet may have reshaped the way we live, but the lessons from Sarah's harrowing encounter remind us that caution and prudence should never be left behind in the virtual world. In the year 2020, at Los Angeles, California, a young man named Alex was looking for a yoga studio to rent. He was an avid yoga enthusiast and wanted to improve his skills and flexibility. He also had a blog where he posted his photos and videos of his yoga poses and routines. He had a decent number of followers who admired his dedication and talent. He searched online for some affordable and convenient options and came across an ad on Craigslist that caught his eye. It was a spacious and cozy studio in a quiet neighborhood, with hardwood floors, large windows, and a sound system. The rent was only $50 per hour, which seemed like a bargain. The landlord, who called himself Mr. Smith, said he was out of town and could not show him the place in person, but he sent him some photos and a video tour of the studio. He also gave him the address and the code to enter the building. Alex was impressed by the studio and decided to book it for the next day. He contacted Mr. Smith and paid him through PayPal. He received a confirmation email with the details and instructions. He was excited to try out the new place and share his experience with his blog followers. The next day, he packed his yoga mat, his phone, and his tripod and headed to the studio. He arrived at the address and found a 4-story brick building with a sign that said Yoga Studio. He entered the code on the keypad and heard a beep. He opened the door and walked into a dimly lit hallway. He followed the signs to the studio, which was on the 3rd floor. He reached the studio door and opened it with another code. He stepped inside and smiled. The studio looked exactly like in the photos and video. It was clean, spacious, and cozy. He felt a warm and inviting vibe from the place. He turned on the lights and the sound system and played some relaxing music. He set up his tripod and phone near the window and started recording his video for his blog. He introduced himself and explained that he had rented this studio through Craigslist and that he was going to show some of his favorite yoga poses and routines. He smiled at the camera and said, "Let's get started." He rolled out his mat on the floor and began his warm-up exercises. He stretched his arms, legs, neck, and back. He breathed deeply and calmly. He felt good and relaxed. He moved on to some more challenging poses, such as the downward-facing dog, the warrior pose, the tree pose, and the bridge pose. He demonstrated each pose with grace and skill. He explained how each pose benefited his body and mind. He looked at the camera occasionally and smiled. 11. He decided to end his video with a crow pose, which was one of his favorites. It involved balancing on his hands with his knees resting on his elbows and lifting his feet off the ground. It required strength, balance, and concentration. He positioned himself on his mat and placed his hands on the floor shoulder width apart. He bent his elbows slightly and lifted his hips up. He brought his knees close to his chest and placed them on top of his elbows. He shifted his weight forward and lifted one foot off the ground. Then he lifted the other foot off the ground. He held the pose for a few seconds, feeling proud of himself. He looked at the camera and said, "And that's how you do a crow pose." Suddenly, he heard a loud click behind him. He turned his head slightly and saw that the lights in the studio had gone out. He felt a surge of fear in his chest. He wondered what had happened. He tried to keep calm. He thought maybe it was just a power outage or a blown fuse. He thought maybe he should end the video now. He thought maybe he should get out of here as soon as possible. But before he could do anything, he felt something grab him from behind. He felt something cold and hard press against his neck. He felt something sharp pierce his skin. He felt something wet trickle down his throat. He felt something hot fill his lungs. He felt something dark engulf his vision. He felt something silent take over his voice. He felt nothing at all. In the weeks that followed Alex's disappearance, a wave of panic and intrigue swept through the city of Los Angeles. Friends, family, and followers grew increasingly worried as the young man's blog went silent. Calls to his phone went unanswered, and his social media accounts lay dormant. The mystery of what had happened to Alex consumed the minds of those who knew him and many more who had followed his online yoga journey. The police launched a thorough investigation, starting with a Craigslist ad that had led Alex to the mysterious studio. They tracked down the PayPal transaction and Mr. Smith, the supposed landlord. However, their efforts revealed that Mr. Smith was a pseudonym, and the trail led to a dead end. It turned out that the address provided was for a vacant building, and the codes for entry had been changed. Detectives dug deeper, scouring the dark corners of the internet for any leads. They traced the IP address from which Mr. Smith had communicated with Alex, only to discover that it was routed through a maze of proxy servers and dead ends. It seemed as though the elusive culprit had covered their tracks meticulously. Despite their best efforts, the case eventually grew cold. Leads dried up and media attention began to wane. The city moved on, but the mystery of Alex's disappearance haunted those who had known him and even those who hadn't. Over time, theories and speculations circulated. Some believed that he had been targeted because of his online presence, while others thought it might have been a random act of violence. A few conspiracy theories even emerged, suggesting that Alex had staged his disappearance for publicity. But deep down, no one truly knew what had happened that fateful day in the yoga studio. The studio itself became a place of urban legend, whispered about in hushed tones by locals. Some claimed it was haunted, while others believed it to be cursed. Few dared to enter, and the building fell into further disrepair. As the years passed, the memory of Alex and the mystery of his disappearance faded, becoming just another unsolved enigma in the sprawling city of Los Angeles. His blog remained frozen in time, a poignant reminder of a young man who had vanished without a trace, leaving only his yoga poses as a lasting testament to his existence. The case of Alex's disappearance remained a haunting mystery, a tale that the city couldn't forget, a story that would be passed down through the generations, ensuring that the memory of the young man who had once graced the yoga studio would never truly disappear. Two, in the year 2017, at a sweltering summer evening in Florida, a seemingly ordinary man named Michael found himself on the precipice of a life-altering ordeal. His choice to sell a smartphone through Craigslist, a decision made with a sense of anticipation, would soon thrust him into a harrowing and unexpected journey filled with darkness, despair, and ultimately, redemption. Florida, with its shimmering coastline and lush landscapes, was the backdrop for this fateful encounter. Michael, a middle-aged man with an unassuming demeanor, had decided to part with his smartphone, looking to upgrade to a newer model. Eager to find a buyer, he turned to Craigslist, an online marketplace that connected him with potential purchasers from all walks of life. On a sultry summer morning, Michael posted an ad for his smartphone on Craigslist. The advertisement was met with swift interest. Within hours, his phone buzzed with a message from a prospective buyer named Sarah. They exchanged pleasantries and swiftly agreed to meet at a bustling mall near their respective locations. As Michael arrived at the designated meeting place, anxiety began to creep into his thoughts. He had heard stories of Craigslist deals gone awry, but he brushed aside his unease, reminding himself that most transactions were smooth and uneventful. With the smartphone tucked safely in his pocket, he scanned the mall's crowded atrium. A young woman, Sarah, sat on a bench, her eyes glued to her phone screen. Michael approached her cautiously, extending a friendly hand. As they introduced themselves, Sarah's demeanor appeared cordial, confirming that she had come to purchase his smartphone. Negotiations commenced, and an agreement was reached. A satisfied smile crossed Sarah's face as she counted out the cash. In the midst of this seemingly routine transaction, a moment of dreadful betrayal erupted. A searing pain gripped Michael's chest, leaving him gasping for breath. He glanced downward, his vision clouded by shock, and was met with a horrifying sight. Sarah had drawn a gleaming blade, and with shocking swiftness, she plunged it into Michael's chest. 11. The pain was excruciating, and Michael's mind reeled in disbelief. Instinct took over as he attempted to fend off his attacker, but Sarah's strength and determination were overpowering. The blade found its mark again and again, punctuating the scene with grisly violence. Blood poured from Michael's wounds as he fell to the ground, consciousness slipping away. With his last ounce of strength, he watched in helpless horror as Sarah snatched the smartphone and fled, disappearing into the bustling mall crowd. Michael lay there, broken and bleeding, a victim of a vicious assault that had come out of nowhere. Passers-by, alarmed by the gruesome scene unfolding before them, dialed 911 in frantic haste. Within mere minutes, sirens wailed through the Florida air, and paramedics descended upon the scene. Michael's life hung by the thinnest of threads as they rushed him to the hospital, their deft hands working feverishly to stanch the bleeding and stabilize his fading vital signs. In the emergency room, a team of dedicated medical professionals waged a valiant battle to save Michael's life. His family and friends were notified, and they rushed to his side, their hearts heavy with dread. In the agonizing hours that followed, they gathered in the hospital waiting room, clinging to the fragile hope that Michael would survive. Meanwhile, the wheels of justice began to turn. The police, armed with security footage from the mall, initiated a relentless hunt for Sarah. Through careful examination of the surveillance tapes, they identified her as the assailant, setting in motion a citywide manhunt. It didn't take long for her to be apprehended, a troubled past catching up with her at last. Sarah, a young woman with a turbulent history marked by drug abuse and a revolving door of jail cells, had been driven to her desperate act by a gnawing need for money. However, The vicious attack had been an unplanned, impulsive act that left her own life in tatters. As the investigation deepened, a disconcerting pattern emerged. Sarah was revealed to be a repeat offender, her rap sheet a damning testament to her dangerous criminal inclinations. The gravity of her crimes cast a long shadow, and the date for her trial was set for the following year. Michael, the survivor of her brutal attack, was summoned to take the stand and testify against her. The day of the trial arrived, and Michael, still bearing the physical and emotional scars of his ordeal, was determined to see justice served. With a mixture of trepidation and resolve, he took the witness stand and recounted the horrifying events of that fateful summer day. His testimony, a raw and vivid narrative, left an indelible impact on the jury, who were resolute in their conviction of Sarah's guilt. Sarah, in a somber courtroom, received a sentence that matched the gravity of her crimes, a daunting 25 years in prison. It was a moment of closure for Michael, a chance to put the nightmare behind him and finally begin the arduous process of healing. In the aftermath of his traumatic experience, Michael embarked on a journey of recovery and transformation. He found solace in the unwavering support of his family and friends. Slowly, he pieced his life back together, forging a new path that led him away from the shadows of his past. In 2021, 4 years after the vicious attack, Michael's life took an unexpected turn. He crossed paths with Emily, a woman whose warmth and compassion mirrored the love he had once thought unattainable. Their connection deepened, and they found in each other the companionship and strength to overcome the scars that life had inflicted upon them. Reflecting on the harrowing chapter of his life, Michael realized that it had fundamentally changed him. It had taught him to savor every moment, to hold tight to the people he cherished, and to never take anything for granted. He became an advocate for victims of violent crime, channeling his experience into a powerful message of resilience and hope. In the end, Michael's journey was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure and thrive in the face of adversity. The dark spectre of that summer day had cast a long shadow, but it had also kindled a light within him, a light that illuminated a path towards redemption, love, and a newfound appreciation for the preciousness of life. Three. In the year 2018, in the heart of California's vibrant city, Los Angeles, life was a bustling symphony of diverse souls navigating their daily routines. Among these countless individuals, a young man named Jack stood out, his heart aflutter with anticipation for an upcoming event that promised to be the highlight of his year. The concert of his dreams, featuring his all-time favorite band, The Killers, was on the horizon. Jack's obsession with The Killers was no secret to those who knew him. He had listened to their songs on repeat, memorized every lyric, and collected every album. The announcement of their concert in Los Angeles had sent ripples of excitement through him, and he had been determined to secure tickets for weeks. However, as the days ticked by, the tickets had become as elusive as a mirage in the desert. Frustration gnawed at Jack's patience as he scoured websites and called ticket vendors in vain. Every avenue he explored seemed to lead to the same disheartening conclusion. The tickets were sold out, and his chances of attending the concert were dwindling. Undeterred by adversity, Jack's resolve drove him to explore an unconventional option: Craigslist. With hope in his heart, he navigated the labyrinth and listings, seeking a glimmer of opportunity. Hours turned into minutes as he scrolled through ad after ad, his eyes scanning for any sign of a lifeline. Then, like a beacon in the digital darkness, Jack stumbled upon a listing that seemed almost too good to be true. A seller named Tommy had listed tickets for the Killers concert at a reasonable price. Hope surged within Jack as he contacted Tommy, and their negotiations soon bore fruit. They agreed to meet in a quiet alley in downtown La, a decision that would forever alter Jack's life. The day of the meeting arrived, and Jack's emotions swirled like a tempestuous sea. Eager anticipation mixed with a subtle undercurrent of anxiety. He had never purchased tickets from a stranger in such an obscure location, but the allure of seeing his beloved band in concert overrode his apprehensions. Arriving at the appointed alley at the precise time, Jack was met by Tony, a figure who exuded an aura of nervous tension. Jack sensed something amiss, but brushed it aside as nerves. With a palpable sense of determination, he handed over the cash to Tony in exchange for the coveted tickets. However, as soon as Tony's fingers closed around the money, an electrifying shift occurred. In a heartbeat, the alley transformed from a backdrop of anticipation to a theater of terror. Tony, with chilling swiftness, produced a firearm and trained it on Jack. "Give me everything you have." Tony's voice trembled with desperation. Jack's world shattered in an instant. Panic gripped him as he faced the cold, unforgiving barrel of the gun. His mind raced, and fear coursed through his veins like icy venom. Before he could process the surreal turn of events, Tony pulled the trigger. Gunshots rang out in the confined alley, a cacophony of chaos and cruelty. Jack felt searing pain tear through his chest and leg, and he crumpled to the ground, agony and disbelief merging into a nightmarish crescendo. Blood oozed from his wounds, staining the cold pavement beneath him. In a cruel twist of fate, Tony stripped Jack of his shoes, his phone, and the cash that had been intended for the concert tickets. Leaving Jack writhing in agony, he fled into the shadowy labyrinth of the city, Jack's belongings clutched tightly in his grasp. Jack's world dimmed as he lay on the unforgiving ground, the world around him fading into obscurity. His life hung by the slimmest of threads, his breaths shallow and ragged. He gazed up at the unforgiving night sky, a sense of hopelessness enveloping him. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A police cruiser, on a routine patrol, passed by the dimly lit alley, its occupants oblivious to the unfolding tragedy. The sharp reports of gunfire, however, were impossible to ignore. In an instant, the officers were alerted, and their instincts kicked into overdrive. They rushed to the scene, their sirens wailing in the Los Angeles night. There they found Jack, his life ebbing away, consciousness slipping like sand through his fingers. The officers wasted no time. They called for an ambulance, their training propelling them into action. At the hospital, a team of dedicated medical professionals confronted the grim reality of Jack's injuries. His wounds were grievous, and the battle to save his life was fraught with uncertainty. For Jack's family and friends, dread hung in the air as they received the dreaded call. They rushed to his side, united in their fervent prayers for his survival. The hours that followed were a relentless struggle. The medical team fought valiantly to stem the tide of blood, to mend the shattered flesh and bone. Jack hovered on the precipice between life and death, his spirit a fragile ember amidst the raging tempest of pain and uncertainty. As Jack clung tenaciously to life, a relentless investigation unfolded in the corridors of law enforcement. The identity of his assailant, obscured by the shadows of that fateful night, became the focus of an unyielding manhunt. The police followed the trail of evidence, piecing together the puzzle of Tony's identity. In time, their pursuit bore fruit, and Tony was apprehended. The threads of this criminal past unraveled, revealing a history marked by violence and a dark penchant for illicit activities. Jack's attack, it seemed, was but one chapter in a sordid saga of criminality. After a protracted and arduous trial, Tony was ultimately found guilty of attempted murder and robbery. His sentence, befitting the gravity of his crimes, was life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Jack, the road to recovery was an arduous one, marred by both physical and emotional scars. He had lost not only his possessions, but also his sense of trust in a world that had betrayed him so brutally. His confidence was shattered, his life upended by an act of senseless violence. Yet, in the midst of the darkness that threatened to consume him, Jack found a glimmer of hope. He embarked on a journey of healing, slowly rebuilding the shattered pieces of his existence. It took time to regain his faith in humanity, but he refused to be defined by the horrors of that night. The wounds, both seen and unseen, left a profound mark on Jack's psyche. The incident was a stark reminder of the perilous nature of trusting strangers, a lesson etched into his very being. As he moved forward, he carried with him the weight of that fateful night, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. Once upon a chilling autumn evening in a sleepy town in rural America, a young woman named Emily found herself alone in her small, dimly lit apartment. The wind outside howled like a vengeful spirit, and the rain tapped at her window like the gnarled fingers of a ghost trying to find its way inside. Emily, a recent college graduate, had moved to this town for a fresh start, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Little did she know, her quest for solitude would lead her down a path of terror and despair that would forever haunt her. Emily had come across a job listing on Craigslist earlier that day. It was for a part-time position as a librarian at the town's historical society, a quaint and charming building nestled at the heart of the community. The ad, posted by someone named Mr. Holloway, had piqued her interest. It offered an impressive salary for what seemed like a simple job. With her student loans looming over her, Emily decided to give it a shot. When she arrived at the Historical Society the next day, Emily was greeted by a gloomy old building. Ivy crawled up its weathered walls, and the windows were streaked with grime. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, but then she pushed open the creaking door. A bell above it tinkled, announcing her presence. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the dim lighting cast long, eerie shadows across the rows of ancient books and artifacts. A tall, slender man with a sharp face and piercing eyes stood behind the counter. He introduced himself as Mr. Holloway, the curator of the Historical Society. "Welcome, Emily," he said, extending a bony hand. "I'm pleased to have you here. The job is quite straightforward: cataloging and organizing our collection, assisting visitors, and locking up at night. But there is one rule you must follow diligently." Emily listened intently, curious about what the rule might be. "Never, under any circumstances," Mr. Holloway continued, his voice lowering to a whisper, "enter the basement. It's off limits, and I must insist that you respect that boundary." Emily nodded, her curiosity piqued even further. The mysterious basement, off limits and forbidden, filled her with a sense of unease. As the weeks went by, Emily settled into her new role. She meticulously catalogued the collection and greeted the occasional visitor who wandered into the Historical Society. Yet, her curiosity about the basement gnawed at her. Late at night, when the building was silent, she could hear faint, eerie sounds echoing from below. One evening, as the rain poured outside and the wind howled like a choir of lost souls, Emily's curiosity got the best of her. She decided to explore the forbidden basement, convinced that Mr. Holloway's warning was merely a tactic to keep her away from something valuable or intriguing. She slipped down the creaking stairs, the dim light from above fading away as she descended into the inky darkness below. The air grew colder, and the faint echoes became more pronounced, like distant whispers. In the basement, Emily found a room filled with old, dusty books and relics. But what drew her attention was a heavy, ornate wooden door at the far end. It was adorned with strange symbols and seemed ancient, as if it held secrets from centuries past. Unable to resist, she approached the door and tried to turn the handle. To her surprise, the door swung open with ease, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an eerie, greenish glow. Inside, rows of tall, glass jars lined the shelves, each containing a grotesque, deformed creature suspended in a strange, glowing liquid. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the truth. These were not creatures of nature. They were abominations created by some twisted mind. Panic set in as she stumbled backward, knocking over one of the jars. The glass shattered, and the vile liquid spilled onto the floor. A guttural growl echoed through the chamber, and Emily turned to see a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It was Mr. Holloway, his eyes now burning with a malevolent light. "You shouldn't have come here, Emily," he hissed, his voice now dripping with malice. Emily stumbled backward, her mind racing as she realized the true horror of the situation. Mr. Holloway was not a curator, but a mad scientist conducting unholy experiments in the dark depths of the basement. Desperation overtook her, and she bolted toward the stairs, racing to escape the nightmare that had unfolded before her. But Mr. Holloway was close behind, his inhuman speed and strength quickly closing the gap. As she reached the top of the stairs, Emily threw open the door and burst out into the rainy night. She ran through the streets, terror driving her forward, not daring to look back. 111. For days, Emily lived in fear, constantly looking over her shoulder, convinced that Mr. Holloway would find her and exact his revenge. She couldn't trust anyone in the town, not knowing who might be complicit in his sinister experiments. Eventually, Emily gathered enough evidence to expose Mr. Holloway's horrific deeds to the authorities. When they raided the Historical Society, they found the basement chamber empty, the jars shattered, and Mr. Holloway gone without a trace. To this day, Emily lives in constant fear, haunted by the memory of the grotesque creatures she saw in the basement and the knowledge that Mr. Holloway might still be out there, conducting his twisted experiments in the shadows. She can never escape the chilling truth that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, and the horrors of that fateful night on Craigslist continue to haunt her. A dark chapter in a tale of terror she could never forget. 111. It was a gloomy evening in the quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled deep within the heart of the American Midwest. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the sleepy streets. Most residents were cosily nestled in their homes, blissfully unaware of the sinister presence that lurked among them. At the edge of town stood a dilapidated Victorian mansion, its once grand architecture now a faded memory of opulence. Locals referred to it as 1313 Blackwood Avenue, a name that sent shivers down their spines. The house had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember, and tales of its dark past were whispered among the townsfolk. Some said it was cursed, while others believed it was haunted. One fateful evening, as the town was enveloped in an eerie silence, an unusual listing appeared on the popular online marketplace, Craigslist. The listing was titled Historic Victorian Mansion, 1313 Blackwood Avenue, and was posted by a user with the enigmatic pseudonym, The Dollmaker. The ad promised a remarkable deal. The mansion, a sprawling 10-bedroom, 5-bathroom property, was listed at a price that seemed too good to be true. Must sell quickly, the listing declared, serious inquiries only. The Dollmaker provided a contact number and an email address, but offered no photos of the interior. Curiosity piqued, locals couldn't resist the allure of such an incredible bargain. The tale of the mansion's dark history did little to deter potential buyers. Instead, it only fueled their desire for a paranormal thrill or an incredible investment opportunity. Within days, interested buyers began to contact the dealmaker. Among them was Sarah, a young real estate agent eager to make her mark in the industry. She had heard whispers about the mansion, but saw the listing as a chance to prove herself. With trembling fingers, she dialed the mysterious number and arranged a viewing. Sarah arrived at 1313 Blackwood Avenue on a cloudy Saturday morning. The mansion loomed ominously before her, shrouded in fog. The dealmaker, a shadowy figure in a black coat and fedora, greeted her at the front gate. "Welcome, Sarah," he said in a low, raspy voice. "I trust you're prepared to make a deal." As they stepped into the mansion, The air grew colder, and the atmosphere shifted. Sarah noticed strange paintings hanging on the walls, portraits of people with hollow eyes, each one eerily lifelike. The dealmaker led her through dimly lit corridors, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The tour took an unsettling turn when they entered the basement. The dealmaker revealed a hidden chamber, its walls adorned with disturbing symbols. Sarah's heart raced as she stumbled upon a pentagram etched into the floor. Dread washed over her. The dealmaker began to unravel the mansion's gruesome history. He spoke of a wealthy family that had once owned the property, the Blackwoods. They were known for their lavish parties and eccentric rituals that drew the attention of the town. Whispers of dark sacrifices and unholy ceremonies spread like wildfire. One night, a fire had engulfed the mansion, leaving no survivors. The townspeople believed it to be divine punishment for the family's wicked ways. The mansion was abandoned, left to decay over the years. Sarah couldn't help but wonder why the dealmaker was so eager to sell a property with such a sinister past. She decided to dig deeper, uncovering the truth behind his true identity and motives. Late one night, Sarah ventured back to 1313 Blackwood Avenue, determined to uncover the dealmaker's secret. Armed with a flashlight, she began to search the mansion for any hidden clues. She discovered a locked room on the third floor, its door adorned with an intricate, ancient-looking lock. With trembling hands, she managed to pick it open. Inside, she found a room filled with dusty old books, manuscripts, and journals, all detailing the Blackwood family's occult practices. As she delved deeper into the journals, Sarah uncovered a startling revelation. The dealmaker was not an ordinary man, but a malevolent entity bound to the mansion by curse. The Blackwood family had made a pact with dark forces, trading their souls for wealth and power. In return, they were cursed to forever serve as agents of evil, luring unsuspecting victims into the mansion's web. Sarah's discovery sent shivers down her spine. She realized that she had walked right into the clutches of a malevolent force. The mansion's hauntings escalated. Sarah heard whispered voices in empty rooms, saw shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her vision, and experienced terrifying nightmares that felt all too real. Desperate to escape the mansion's grip, she began researching ancient rituals to banish the malevolent spirit. 11. Weeks turned into months as Sarah delved deeper into the occult, determined to confront the entity. She discovered a ritual that required her to gather rare ingredients and perform a cleansing ceremony within the mansion's unholy chamber. As the appointed night arrived, Sarah entered the chamber, her heart pounding. The dealmaker, now fully possessed by the malevolent spirit, confronted her. The room filled with an otherworldly presence, and the walls seemed to pulse with dark energy. Sarah recited the incantation, her voice trembling but resolute. The chamber erupted in chaos as the entity fought to maintain its hold. The ritual reached its climax, and blinding light engulfed the room. Sarah felt a surge of power coursing through her as the spirit's presence weakened. With a final burst of energy, she banished the malevolent spirit from the mansion. The dealmaker's form crumbled into dust, leaving behind only the fedora that had once adorned its head. The mansion itself seemed to sigh in relief, its dark history finally put to rest. With the curse lifted, 1313 Blackwood Avenue slowly began to crumble into ruins, its dark past fading into legend. Sarah, now forever marked by her ordeal, vowed to ensure that the mansion's tale lived on as a warning to those who sought to make deals with the supernatural. As the years passed, the memory of 1313 Blackwood Avenue became a chilling cautionary tale, a testament to the darkness that could lurk behind the facade of an ordinary Craigslist listing. The mansion and its malevolent spirit may have been banished, but the legend would live on, ensuring that the horrors of that fateful deal would never be forgotten. It all started in a rather peculiar manner, leading me to initially think it was some kind of prank or a belated April Fool's joke pulled by one of my friends. However, events would take a dark and unsettling turn. I found myself seated at my computer desk, gazing at the monitor emitting a bright blue glow. It was an ordinary evening, and I was casually browsing through classified ads on a website similar to Craigslist, as was my routine when searching for interesting or profitable opportunities. The time had come to wrap up my computer tasks and unwind, but fate had something extraordinary in store. After a few minutes of procrastination, I made up my mind to finish my work and shut down the computer. Just before doing so, my eyes were drawn to a peculiar ad. The photo in the ad was surreal and almost unbelievable, taking me a moment to grasp its meaning. The images displayed my own room, furnished with my personal belongings. What was even more unsettling was that the ad contained my full name, had a listed price of $1,500. Initially, I brushed it off as an elaborate prank, but as I delved further into the ad's contents, it became apparent that this was no joking matter. The ad included photos taken from my social media accounts, selfies with friends, beach pictures with my supposed girlfriend, and even images of my personal possessions. It was an invasion of my privacy that sent shivers down my spine. The most disturbing part, however, lay at the end of the ad, where I read the chilling words, "May be grabbed by 2 to 3 people. Bringing a weapon is recommended but not necessary." It sounded like a menacing threat, crushing my hopes that this might be a mere jest. How many people had seen this ad, and who would even respond to such a bizarre offer? A dreadful realization struck me. The ad contained my exact address. The possibility was undeniable, given the abundance of personal details in the ad. I frantically returned to the listing and saw the line. Address, $1,500. It was grotesque and sinister. Someone was attempting to profit from my personal information. My mind raced, contemplating how many other ads like this might exist. How many unsuspecting individuals have fallen into this sinister trap? Faced with this nightmarish situation, I urgently reported the ad, hoping it would be removed. However, I knew that it might take a considerable amount of time for the site moderators to address my request, and I couldn't afford to wait. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I sought a way to contact Craigslist support directly, but I came up empty-handed, finding only a feedback form. My hopes were dwindling. Desperation led me to check my email, where I noticed a glimmer of hope. I hastily crafted a message to the seller using a random email address, pleading for the removal of the listing, offering 5 times the listed price if necessary. I waited a response with bated breath. As minutes stretched into agonizing hours, I scurried around my house, securing doors and windows, and dimming the lights to create the illusion of an empty home. The chances of some malevolent stranger stumbling upon my location were slim, given the vastness of the internet. Nevertheless, I was determined to reduce the risk to absolute zero. Just when hope teetered on the brink of extinction, my nerves reached their limit, and a notification chimed in, signaling a new message in my inbox. My heart plummeted as I read the ominous words. Information has already been sold. The message was unequivocal, and I sank in my chair, my last glimmer of hope extinguished. How much time had elapsed since the sale? Was it a matter of minutes, an hour, or perhaps a day? My thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the sound of wheels crunching on gravel. I cautiously peered through the curtains and spotted a sleek black SUV, its occupants concealed behind tinted windows. I struggled to convince myself that they would simply turn and depart, but my fear remained unrelenting. However, the vehicle remained stationary, its doors swinging open in unison. 2 enigmatic figures garbed in black emerged. My initial impulse was to flee, but an overpowering sense of dread held me in place. I watched in paralyzed silence as they approached the front door and rapped loudly, their sinister intentions unmistakable. My plan took shape rapidly. I decided to dial 911, chastising myself for not doing so earlier. The front door was sturdy, and it would take them some time to breach it, providing me with a precious window of opportunity. However, just as I initiated the call, I heard a peculiar, ominous sound emanating from the other side of the door, the keypad being tampered with. My heart plummeted as I realized that they likely knew the door code, information I had unwittingly provided. Panic surged through me, and I desperately sought a hiding spot. As the door unlocked with a click, I stealthily slipped into the pantry, the lights flickering to life. The two men entered the kitchen, whispering as they scoured the room intently. I almost reached the back door, but clumsily collided with a table, cursing my own ineptitude. Their hushed conversation ceased abruptly, and they commenced a thorough search of the kitchen, attempting to discern my whereabouts. I retreated into the pantry as the lights blazed on. The men, undeterred by the noise, infiltrated the kitchen, continuing their relentless quest. I could discern their footsteps drawing closer, and my heart raced in my chest. While they located the pantry, they found it empty as I had cleverly slipped out through the back door. My escape strategy involved vanishing into the dense woods. I recognized that the internet was a vast expanse, and the likelihood of someone stumbling upon this enigmatic ad was infinitesimal. Still, I was determined to eliminate even that remote possibility. Just when hope seemed to dwindle, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I retrieved it, and the call displayed Lexi's name, my girlfriend. My eyes widened. Lexi could return home at any moment. What if they had decided to capture her instead of me? I answered the call, my voice trembling as I cautioned her not to come home, explaining that something was terribly amiss. She inquired about my whereabouts, her voice laced with terror. I informed her that I was hidden in the pantry, hoping it was a safe haven for the time being. But before I could convey more information, the call abruptly terminated. Despair coursed through me as I wondered if they had found Lexi. Had I failed to forewarn her in time? Then an unfamiliar, disconcerting, vibrating sound emanated from the neighboring room. One of the men innocuously retrieved the phone, their voice distorted and gruff. At that moment, a dreadful realization dawned on me. The person who had posted the ad wasn't stalking me. They were living alongside me. Lexi herself might have posted that malicious ad, inadvertently divulging my location to these malevolent individuals. My heart constricted with despair as I listened to their conversation. They discussed the situation, and it became apparent that Lexi had indeed informed them of my whereabouts. The realization that she might have betrayed me added a layer of anguish to my already harrowing predicament. As I contemplated the gravity of the situation, my desperate eyes caught a subtle movement from the girl sitting at the table across the room. Thin and fragile, she appeared to be barely out of her teens, her vacant eyes fixed on a plate of artificial food. I was moved by an overwhelming sense of pity for her. Attempting to communicate with her, I whispered, "Can you hear me?" Her response, if any, was subtle, but it was evident that she was trying to convey something. I focused intently on her, and she managed to drop a steak knife, which clattered a few feet away from me. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. I strained against my restraints, attempting to reach the fallen knife. It was a race against time, and my hand inched closer to the knife with each desperate effort. The men soon noticed my intentions and attempted to thwart my endeavor, but it was too late. I seized the knife and thrust it into the nearest assailant's stomach, a surge of warmth washing over me as he loosened his grip. I stumbled back, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and made a run for it, darting out the door and onto the veranda. My heart pounded as I sprinted, casting a fearful glance toward the car where the guardian stood. Our eyes locked briefly, confusion giving way to fury. He brandished a silver pistol, aiming it at me. I evaded the bullet just in time, a deafening gunshot echoing in my ears. I sprinted around a corner, with two more gunshots resounding behind me. I knew that my only hope of escape lay in reaching the nearby river. The water was bone-chilling cold as I plunged in, my body carried away by the current. I glimpsed the guardian pursuing me, gun in hand and rage in his eyes. Unable to bear his menacing gaze, I turned away just as I collided with a massive rock jutting from the water. Pain surged through my head, and the world darkened as I succumbed to unconsciousness. The subsequent events are a hazy, fragmented blur. According to the nurse, I was discovered under a bridge by Good Samaritans who rushed me to the hospital. I cooperated fully with the police, recounting every detail, but the house's location remained elusive. The river had several tributaries, making it impossible to determine the exact spot I had entered or how long I had swum. While I was relieved to have escaped, the knowledge that Lexi, if that was even her real name, continued to sell personal information haunted me. The girl who had saved me remained captive in that house, and somewhere out there, the Guardian was hunting for his next acquisition. 11. It started out so strangely that my first thoughts were that it must be some kind of joke. A belated April Fool's prank that one of my friends had decided to pull. But unfortunately, events took on a completely different, horrible, and even creepy coloring. I was sitting at my computer desk, staring at the monitor, on which a bright blue light was burning. It was a normal evening, and I was browsing Craigslist ads as usual, looking for something interesting or profitable. It was time to finish my computer work and rest, but then something incredible happened. After a few minutes of procrastination, I decided to finish my business and shut down my computer. But before doing so, my gaze fell on a strange ad. The photo in the ad was so obscure and unrealistic that it took me a few seconds to realize what I was looking at. The photo showed my room, with my furniture and personal belongings. The caption of the ad showed my full name and the price, $1,500. My first thought was, this is some kind of prank. But as I read further, I realized it wasn't a joke. The ad included photos that were taken from my social media page. Selfies with friends, pictures from the beach with my girlfriend. My belongings, my life was on display. I was overcome with a sense of anxiety and fear. I proceeded to read the description in the ad, and there were details about my life, including my diet and even the medications I was taking. It was all too personal and frightening. But the scariest part was written at the end of the ad: may be grabbed by 2 to 3 people. Bringing a weapon is recommended, but not necessary. Captured. That sounded like a threat. All my hopes that this was just a joke were crumbling. How many people had seen this ad? And who even looked for such strange offers? I began to panic, realizing that my personal life was on display and that someone knew too much. Then the horrible thought struck me: didn't the ad list my exact address? It could very well have been. The ad included such numerous details about my life that I was no longer ruling out the possibility. I went back to the ad and saw the line: address costs $1,500. Write if interested. It was absolutely sick and creepy. Someone was trying to make money off my personal information. I started to wonder how many other ads like this existed. How many people have fallen into a similar trap when faced with these horrible circumstances? I immediately sent a complaint about the ad, hoping it would be removed, but I knew it could take a long time before the site moderators would consider my request, and I didn't have time to wait. My fingers raced across the keyboard as I tried to find a way to contact Craigslist support, but I couldn't find anything but a feedback form. My hope was fading. I opened my email, my last hope for help. I typed in a random address for the seller and sent a desperate request to remove the listing, offering to pay 5 times the listed amount. Waiting for a response was agony. I ran around the house closing doors and windows, turned off the lights to create the illusion that no one was home. I realized that the chance of some psychopath stumbling upon this object was a long shot. The internet is huge, but I wanted to reduce that to 0. Just when I was beginning to lose hope, my nerves were at their limit, I had the notification of a new message. My heart sank. Information has already been sold, the message read. I dropped my head into my hands. It was too late. How long ago was it that I was sold? A couple minutes ago. an hour, a day. My thoughts were interrupted by the noise of wheels on gravel. I lifted the curtain and saw a black SUV, the passengers inside of which couldn't be seen because of the dark windows. I tried to convince myself that it was okay, they'd probably just turn around and drive away. But fear flared up inside me again. However, the car remained where it was, and the doors suddenly opened simultaneously. Two figures, dressed entirely in black, jumped out of the car. My first reaction was to run, but fear held me in place. I watched helplessly as the men approached the front door and knocked loudly. It didn't take a genius to figure out their plan. Wait for me to open the door and then drive me away in their car. But I had a plan of my own. I quickly started dialing 911, berating myself hard for not doing it sooner. The front door was strong and heavy, but it would take them a few minutes to get inside. And then I heard it. A strange squeaky sound from the other side of the door. After a few seconds, I realized what it was. It was the sound of the keypad on the door. They probably knew the code to the door, and I had just given them that code. The blood froze in my veins, and I started looking for a place I could hide. Click. The door unlocked. I hid in a dark corner of the kitchen, just as it began to open with a slow creak. The back door was at the other end of the kitchen. I stealthily approached it, glad I had turned off the lights beforehand. The two men quietly entered the living room, whispering discussions about where I might be. I almost reached the back door, but hit the kitchen table, which made me curse myself for being inattentive. The whispers were instantly silenced, and they headed straight in my direction, starting to look for me. I hustled into the pantry just as the lights came on. The men apparently weren't worried about being inconspicuous anymore and started searching the kitchen. I closed my eyes and began to pray that they would ignore the pantry, knowing that if they'd found me, I would be defenseless. I bit my fingers and felt time dragging slowly. But finally they left and started looking for me in the other rooms. I exhaled a sigh of relief. Bzzz. My phone rang in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw that it was my girlfriend Lexi calling. My eyes widened. Lexi. She could come home at any minute. What if they decided to capture her instead of me? I answered the phone. Hi, she said. Lexi, don't come home. There's something wrong. It's not safe. Where are you? She asked with terror in her voice. I'm hiding in the pantry. I think I'm safe for now, but the call was interrupted. My heart sank into my heels. Have they found her yet? Had I failed to warn her in time? Then I heard a strange vibrating sound in the next room. One of the men picked up the phone and listened. His voice was hoarse and muffled. Where is he? Another pause, then footsteps heading straight for me. My head began to spin, and then it hit me. The person who posted the ad wasn't following me, he was living with me. Lexi had posted that post, and she had just told them where I was. I ran out of the closet and rushed to the door just as the two men turned the corner. I wanted to look back, but changed my mind. If I looked back, I would start to panic. If I start to panic, I might trip. And if I stumble, they might catch me. I opened the back door and ran out into the cool, damp air. Before I could escape, however, one of the men grabbed my hood and pulled me back sharply, tugging the fabric around my neck. The fabric was pressing against my throat, and I found it hard to breathe. I shoved him with my elbow in desperation and hit him in the ribs. The man cried out in pain, and his grip loosened for a moment. A moment was all I needed. I jerked my chin up, disentangled myself, and fell to the ground on all fours. Immediately, I darted into the woods. There were irritated shouts from behind me. Shoot, the damn thing's going to go in. Give it to me. A loud pop pierced the night, and something whistled past me, embedding itself in the nearest tree. It was a dart. It shot at me like I was a wild animal. The forest was only a few meters away. The air was getting thicker, but I kept running, knowing that if I slowed down, they would catch up to me. I did my best to dodge the darts, diving sideways at every shot, but in the end I was out of luck. Just as I reached the forest, I felt myself being grabbed by a red-hot stinger. Fatigue began to engulf my body, my movements became slow and heavy. The world spun before my eyes, and finally I collapsed onto the forest floor. My memories of what happened next are too blurry and fragmented, the click of the trunk, the sound of chains. They left me a phone either to keep me from going crazy or as a taunt. To make sure I couldn't ask for help, they somehow blocked all posting or messaging functions. At least almost all of them. I walked through the dense forest, the morning light filtering through the snow-covered branches. My wrists were tied behind my back, the rough hand of one of my captors resting on my shoulder, pushing me forward. One of my jailers, a balding man with emerald eyes, opened the door to the basement and said, "It's time to go." He pushed me into a cramped trunk, and a few hours later, I was here in the village. I was taken to a small cottage with purple flowers by the porch and a river flowing leisurely behind the house. It looked nothing like the abandoned factory I had envisioned, but that wasn't enough to take away my anxiety. It's the kind of feeling you get when you walk into a room with a crookedly hanging painting. I sensed something was wrong, but I couldn't tell exactly what it was. The men climbed the steps and opened the door, a black abyss that not even the morning sunlight could illuminate. My feverishly thinking brain imagined the many horrors waiting for me inside. They looked at me expectantly, but I didn't move, shackled by icy fear. The bald man grabbed me by the collar and dragged me inside. Though the room was dark, there was enough light through the drawn curtains to make out rough silhouettes. A couch here, a chair there. Noting the absence of an obvious threat, I relaxed slightly. Baldy flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. After a few futile attempts, he muttered something and turned to leave. The damn power went out again. Tie him up and help me. The second man, a long guy with small dead eyes, tied me to the nearest battery and followed his partner out, slamming the door and leaving me in the dark. It was then that I noticed it. There was a figure at the opposite end of the room. She was sitting on one of the couches, her hand reaching for the TV, clutching something that was probably a remote. It was too frozen for a person, but there weren't many options either. Was it a statue? A mannequin? A mannequin seemed to fit. It was the only solution to explain the thing's immobility. My eyes began to adjust to the darkness, and I realized that mannequins were everywhere. Two stood in the middle of the room, hugging each other as if they were doing a slow dance. Another sat at the dining room table a few feet away from me, holding a fork in his fingers, held up to his mouth as if he was about to take a bite. 1 second, fingers, two mannequins have. Click. Suddenly a light illuminated the room, blinding me for a moment. I opened my eyes and saw a horrifying sight. Each mannequin was a human being. Their pale, skinny bodies were held up by ropes stretching to the ceiling like puppet strings. Dull, empty eyes prompted me to think they were dead men. But looking closer, I realized they were breathing, albeit shallowly. The man watching TV was sprawled out on the couch, blinking slowly every few seconds. The hand that held the remote control had turned a bluish grey. It had taken so long for blood to reach the overstretched limb. I turned my head toward the figure sitting at the table and clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. The girl was thin, skinny even, and barely out of her teens. Her big brown eyes sunk into the eye sockets, staring lifelessly into the plate of artificial food. My heart ached with pity, and I tried to move closer. "Hey," I whispered, "can you hear me?" Even if she could hear me, she could make a sign. I realized they were all drugged. "Listen, my name's Robbie. I'm gonna get you out of here, okay? Don't worry." Barely uttering those words, I realized they were a lie. I pulled on the rope, but she didn't even move. I was about to try to break the battery, but I heard the door behind me open. Before I could turn around, a searing pain shot through my head. Blood trickled down my forehead, and I fell backward, staring at my attacker. An older man with a weathered, scowling face was leaning over me. "Stay down, boy," he said. "I can't have you pissing everybody off." He was wearing an austere white suit, holding a cane stained with my blood. He took a handkerchief out of his pocket and began to wipe it slowly. "Who the hell are you?" His voice sounded like cold silk. "I'm a keeper of sorts. I collect things." Before I could ask another question, he grabbed my chin and pulled me closer, studying my face like a lion assessing a zebra. "Yes," he murmured, "excellent." I tried to pull away, but he held my face like pincers. The bald man walked through the open door, followed by his skinny partner. He nodded proudly at me. "Just as you ordered," he said. The older man, the guardian, didn't answer at first. He continued to examine my face, nodding and occasionally muttering something. "Yeah, good eyes, good skin. Hair doesn't match, but that can be fixed." With a satisfied nod, he let go of me and stood up. "Yes, very good. You will receive your money within a few hours. When I have another request, I will contact you." When I realized what he had just said, my heart sank into my heels. Not only would I not be able to help the girl, I would soon be joining her myself. I would be strung up and put on display like some kind of creepy exhibit. I wrapped my arms around my head, trying to hide from this madness. I can't spend the rest of my life here. I see A&T. Then the guardian seemed to notice something. "Wait a second." He leaned over and looked down at me. "Stand up, boy, and let me get a good look at you." The tall one visibly tensed at those words, as if he was afraid of what the older man might discover. The guardian looked at me, his face creased with disgust. "He's too short." The bald man spoke up. "Only by a few inches. What does it matter? What does it matter? Look around you," he exclaimed, gesturing to the puppet people surrounding us. "Everything is calibrated. If I'm asking for someone 5 feet and 8 inches tall, then that's what I expect." He looked into their faces and seemed to realize something. "You too got it from that girl, didn't you?" That girl? When I realized he was talking about Lexi, my heart dropped. Baldy said, "Her ads are usually reliable. We're just lowlifes." He snapped back. "I'm tired of working with you lazybones. Bring me another one. And this time it better be the right size." The old man turned away from us and headed for the door, tapping his cane on the polished floor. The bald man jabbed a meaty thumb at me. "What do we do with him?" "Get rid of him." I froze, paralyzed with fear. They're going to let me go, aren't they? I had no idea who these people were. They could just take me home, and I couldn't give them away even if I really wanted to. The men's hard stares, however, dashed any hopes of getting out of here alive. Baldy said quietly to his partner, "Wait in the car. It won't take long." The tall one reluctantly obeyed, disappearing behind the door and leaving me alone with the executioner. He untied me from the battery and dragged me, kicking and screaming, straight to the door. I resisted as hard as I could, fighting and scratching, hysteria consuming my brain. "Please don't do this. I won't say anything to anyone, I swear." My face was flooded with tears, and I was screaming like a child. As I fought, I caught a glimpse of the girl sitting at the table. To my surprise, a grain of life had returned to her eyes, and she was looking at me intently. A gaze darted between me and the floor, and I realized she was pointing at something. Although the food in front of her was artificial, the cutlery appeared real, and she managed to drop a steak knife a few feet away from me. I squirmed and darted away from the bald man with all my might, reaching out for the knife. My hand was only half a foot away from the knife, then only a few inches away. The man noticed what I was trying to do and tried to grab the knife first, but it was too late. I grabbed it and stabbed him in the stomach, warm blood spilling down my arm. He loosened his grip, and I stumbled on shaky legs and ran out the door. As I sprinted out onto the veranda, I caught Guardian's gaze, heading for the car. He turned and met my gaze. The confusion on his face turned to hissy rage, and my heart raced. He reached into his suit and pulled out a silver pistol, aiming it at me. I darted away just as a deafening gunshot rang out, nearly bursting my eardrums. I rushed around the corner, and 2 more shots rang out. Knowing that this was my only hope of escape, I rushed toward the river. The icy water was chilling to the bone. As the current carried me away, I saw the guardian running after me with his gun in his hand and fury in his eyes. Unwilling to bear his gaze, I turned away just in time to see a large rock protruding from the water. I tried to round it, but the current was too strong. Pain shot through my head, and everything went dark. The rest of the story was told to me by the nurse. She said some good Samaritans found me under the bridge and took me to the hospital. I told the police everything, but they had no way of finding the house. The river they found me in has many smaller ones flowing into it, and it was impossible to ascertain which one I died into originally, or how long I swam. They said I should be happy I managed to escape, but it didn't matter. Lexi, if that's her real name, is still out there, settling information on people. The girl who saved me is still suspended in that house, and somewhere out there, the Guardian is looking for a new addition to his collection. In 2017, in the vibrant city of Metropolis, a young and aspiring artist named Alex was on the hunt for a studio space to fuel their passion for creativity. Determined to find an affordable space, they turned to the ever-reliable Craigslist app, hoping to stumble upon a hidden gem. Little did they know that this innocent quest would lead them down a perilous path, teeming with danger and unforeseen circumstances. One fateful day, while scrolling through the listings, Alex's eyes landed on an ad that seemed too good to be true. It claimed to offer a well-equipped studio at a remarkably low price, nestled in a secluded corner of the city. Ignoring their better judgment, the young artist couldn't resist the allure and decided to contact the landlord, hoping to secure the space for their creative endeavors. The next morning, Alex received a response from the landlord, a person named Morgan. Morgan seemed friendly and accommodating in their brief email exchange, assuring Alex that the studio was still available and inviting them to visit it in person. Excitement tingled through Alex's veins as they hastily agreed to the meeting, blissfully unaware of the sinister intentions lurking beneath Morgan's facade. Unbeknownst to Alex, Morgan was a dangerous criminal who had devised a wicked scheme to prey upon unsuspecting victims. The studio they advertised was nothing more than a sinister trap designed to ensnare their targets and extort money from them. With a diabolical plan already set into motion, Morgan eagerly awaited Alex's arrival at the appointed location, hidden away from prying eyes. And so, in the heart of Metropolis in the year 2018, Alex found themselves standing before an unremarkable building, its faded sign bearing the words, "The Creativity Haven Studios." Filled with anticipation, Alex entered the dimly lit hallway and followed a narrow staircase that led them to the basement, where the studio awaited their arrival. As they stepped inside, Alex's excitement quickly transformed into trepidation. The door slammed shut behind them with a resounding thud, trapping them in an unfamiliar and claustrophobic space. Panic welled up within Alex as they frantically tried to open the door, only to discover that it had been securely locked from the outside. Realization washed over them like an icy wave as they comprehended the gravity of their situation. They had fallen into Morgan's trap. Fear gripped Alex's heart as they pounded on the door, desperately hoping for someone to hear their cries for help. But the sound of their pleas seemed to dissipate into the cold, lifeless air, swallowed by the depths of the abandoned studio. It became painfully clear that their only companion in this dark and forbidding place was their own growing despair. Days turned into nights, and the passage of time blurred within the confinements of the studio walls. Alex's mind became a battleground between fear and determination. They refused to succumb to Morgan's malevolent game, vowing to find a way out and reclaim their freedom. With each passing moment, they searched for any potential means of escape, meticulously examining every nook and cranny, desperate for a glimmer of hope. Meanwhile, a dedicated detective named Taylor had been tirelessly investigating a string of similar disappearances. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, they sensed a connection to Morgan's nefarious activities. Determined to save Alex and put an end to Morgan's reign of terror, Taylor delved deeper into the shadows, following a trail fraught with danger and deception. Days turned into weeks, and the race against time intensified. The music that echoed through the studio walls reached Taylor's ears, becoming a haunting beacon guiding them closer to Alex's location. With unwavering determination, they gathered a team of skilled officers, prepared to confront the criminal and liberate their captive. In a final, climactic showdown, Taylor and their team stormed the dilapidated studio, their presence shattering the oppressive silence that had plagued Alex for far too long. The resounding clash between good and evil reverberated through the air as chaos erupted within the confines of the once captive space. As the dust settled, Alex emerged from the darkness, their spirit unbroken despite the harrowing ordeal they had endured. In their eyes, a newfound appreciation for life mingled with a steely determination to continue pursuing their artistic dreams. A young artist had emerged from the crucible of captivity, forever changed but unbowed. Together, Alex and Taylor ensured that justice was served. Morgan's reign of terror came to an abrupt end as they were apprehended and faced the full weight of the law. The city, once tainted by their malevolence, breathed a collective sigh of relief, knowing that its streets were a little safer now. In the aftermath of their traumatic experience, Alex's story resonated with people around the world. Their indomitable spirit and unwavering love for art inspired countless individuals, reminding them of the power of resilience in the face of adversity. Through their art, Alex found catharsis, healing the wounds inflicted upon their soul by the clutches of a deranged criminal. And so, the echoes of Alex's journey lingered, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of art. In the years to come, they would continue to share their story, using their experiences to uplift others and spread a message of hope. From the depths of captivity, they had emerged as a beacon of resilience, forever marked by their fateful encounter, but not defined by. In the year 2020, at a small town in Ohio, a young guy named Jake was looking for some antique furniture to decorate his new apartment. He had always loved vintage style and wanted to find something unique and cheap. He browsed through Craigslist and saw an ad for a set of wooden chairs, a table, and a cabinet that looked perfect for his living room. The ad said that the seller was moving out and needed to get rid of them as soon as possible. The price was only $200 for everything. Jake contacted the seller, who introduced himself as Frank, and asked if he could see the items before buying them. Frank agreed and gave him his address, which was about an hour away from Jake's place. He said that he would be home all day and that Jake could come anytime. Jake was excited and decided to go right away. He grabbed his wallet, keys, and phone and drove to Frank's house. When he arrived, he saw that Frank's house was a run-down old cottage in the middle of nowhere. There were no neighbors around, and the place looked abandoned. Jake felt a bit uneasy, but he shrugged it off and knocked on the door. Frank opened it and greeted him with a smile. "Hey, you must be Jake. I'm Frank. Come on in, I'll show you the furniture." Frank led Jake inside the house, which was dark and dusty. There were piles of junk everywhere, and the air smelled musty. Jake wondered how anyone could live in such a mess. "So, where's the furniture?" Jake asked. "Oh, it's in the basement. Follow me." Frank walked towards a door at the end of the hallway and opened it. He gestured for Jake to go downstairs. "It's a bit dark down there, but don't worry, I have a flashlight." Jake hesitated for a moment, but then followed Frank down the stairs. He hoped that the furniture would be worth this trouble. As soon as they reached the bottom of the stairs, Frank slammed the door behind them and locked it. He turned on the flashlight and pointed it at Jake's face. "Surprise," he said with a sinister grin. Jake blinked and felt a surge of fear. He realized that he had walked into a trap. "What are you doing? Let me out," Jake shouted. "Sorry, buddy, but you're not going anywhere. You see, I'm not really selling any furniture. I'm actually looking for some easy money." And he just made my day. Frank pulled out a knife from his pocket and waved it in front of Jake's face. "You're going to call your family or your friends or whoever you have and tell them that you need $10,000 by tomorrow, or else something terrible will happen to you," Frank threatened. Jake's heart was racing, and he knew he had to think fast. He pretended to comply, pulling out his phone and making a call, but instead of calling his family or friends, he dialed 911. He kept the phone hidden from Frank's view as he spoke to the operator, trying to keep his voice steady. "911, what's your emergency?" the operator asked. "I'm in a dangerous situation. I've been lured into a house by a criminal, and he's holding me captive. Please send help," Jake whispered urgently. The operator assured him that help was on the way, and they would track his location through the call. Meanwhile, Jake continued to act as if he was talking to his family, giving Frank the illusion that he was cooperating. "Now tell them to hurry up, or you'll regret it," Frank said, growing impatient. "They said they need some time to gather the money," Jake lied, hoping to stall for as long as possible. As minutes passed, Jake could hear sirens getting closer, and he knew that the police were nearing the house. He needed to keep Frank distracted until they arrived. Trying to buy more time, he asked, "Can I at least sit down while I wait?" Frank hesitated but allowed Jake to sit on a dusty old chair nearby. Jake pretended to be anxious and uneasy, hoping that Frank would let his guard down. As he waited for the police, he tried to engage Frank in conversation, subtly trying to understand his motives and distract him further. "Why are you doing this?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I've got debts to pay, and this seemed like an easy way to get some cash," Frank replied, his eyes darting around the room nervously. As the conversation continued, the police finally arrived outside the house. They had tracked Jake's location through the 911 call, and they were prepared for a potentially dangerous situation. Suddenly, Frank's attention shifted as he heard the sirens too. Realizing that Jake might have been stalling and that help was on the way, he grew agitated and started pacing back and forth. The police announced their presence, shouting through a megaphone, "This is the police. Release the hostage and come out with their hands up." Frank seemed to panic, unsure of his next move. He knew that his options were limited, and with the police surrounding the house, he had little chance of escaping. He looked at Jake, who maintained eye contact, silently urging him to surrender peacefully. Finally, Frank put down the knife and opened the basement door, raising his hands in surrender. The police swiftly apprehended him and brought him into custody. Jake was relieved to be safe and grateful for the quick response from the authorities. The experience had taught him a valuable lesson about being cautious when dealing with strangers online and the importance of trusting his instincts. As the dust settled, Jake thanked the police officers who had come to his rescue. He vowed never to forget this harrowing encounter, and it would forever remind him to be vigilant and cautious. In 2014, in a charming town in Iowa, Ben was a budding musician struggling to make ends meet. Although deeply attached to his cherished guitar, Ben decided to sell it on an online platform called Craigslist. Placing an advertisement, Ben patiently awaited a potential buyer to reach out. A few days later, a message arrived from a person named Chris expressing interest in purchasing the guitar. Ben agreed to meet Chris at a nearby lakeside park to complete the transaction, secretly hoping that Chris would turn out to be a kindred spirit who appreciated music. Upon arriving at the park, Ben spotted Chris seated on a bench. Clad in a denim jacket and sporting sunglasses, Chris exuded an air of cool confidence. Ben approached him, and initiated a friendly greeting asking, "Hi, are you Chris?" Chris responded affirmatively, extending a hand in a handshake. "Yeah, that's me. And you must be Ben." "Nice to meet you," he said. "Pleasure to meet you too. So here's the guitar," Ben replied, showcasing the instrument. "It looks fantastic. Mind if I give it a try?" Chris inquired. "Of course. Go ahead," Ben consented, offering the guitar to Chris. Chris skillfully plucked the strings, displaying his musical prowess. He played a few chords and riffs, wearing a smile of approval. "It's a good guitar. Sounds great. How long have you had it?" Chris inquired. "I've owned it for about 2 years. A friend gave it to me as a gift. They're a musician as well," Ben shared. "Really? That's awesome. What genre of music do you play?" Chris asked. "I mostly play rock and blues. I'm part of a band with a few friends, and we occasionally perform at local bars and clubs," Ben revealed. "That's fantastic. I love rock and blues too. I actually play the drums," Chris said. "Wow, that's really cool. Perhaps we could jam together sometime," Ben suggested. "Yeah, maybe," Chris responded. Engaging in conversation, they exchanged tales and opinions about music. Ben felt content and at ease, believing he had met a genuinely pleasant person who might even become a friend. Days turned into weeks, and Ben couldn't help but feel grateful for the wonderful instrument that had once again become his muse. He continued to pursue his passion for music, sharing his talents with the community through performances and online platforms. The incident with the potential buyer had left him cautious, but he refused to let fear deter him from connecting with others who shared his love for music. As time passed, Ben's music began to gain attention beyond the quaint town in Iowa. His dedication to his craft and resilience in the face of adversity led him to form meaningful connections with fellow musicians and fans alike. Through his heartfelt lyrics and soulful melodies, Ben found solace and a sense of purpose, knowing that his music had the power to touch the lives of others. While the encounter with Chris had been a harrowing experience, Ben chose to focus on the positive aspects of his journey. He recognized that it was crucial to remain cautious and discerning in his interactions with others, but refused to let one negative encounter define his musical pursuits. Instead, he used his story to raise awareness about online safety, reminding fellow musicians and artists to exercise caution when engaging with potential buyers or collaborators. In the years that followed, Ben's music continued to flourish, and he became inspiration to many aspiring musicians. His determination to pursue his dreams and create heartfelt music resonated with people from all walks of life. Through his songs, he conveyed a message of hope, resilience, and the importance of remaining true to one's passion, no matter the challenges faced along the way.